Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second session of INCD 2022. This session is focused on cancer genomics, metabolic disorders, and personalized medicine. Chairperson of this session is Professor Rana Pratap Singh. Professor Rana Pratap Singh is professor at School of Life Sciences, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. His area of research interest is carcinogenesis, cancer, chemoprevention and therapeutics, tumor angiogenesis, radiation therapy, anti-cancer drug development from natural agents, steroids and cancer stem cells. Professor Rana did his PhD in cancer biology from Jawaharlal Nehru University. He is a visiting scientist of University of California, Riverside. He was assistant professor research at Department of Pharmaceutical Science, School of Pharmacy, University of Colorado, USA. He has received several prestigious awards. So now I hand over the mic to Professor Rana.
Thank you, Ashish. So now it is my pleasure to invite Professor Ravindra J. Singh, and he's from Mayo Clinic, Minnesota, USA, and he's going to talk on clinical assessment of vitamins for various diseases. Professor Singh, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for staying so late. The topic is very broad, but I'm going to, for the sake of time, today focus on vitamin D only. And you all know what vitamin D stands for in human diseases. But in modern world, we all thought we have taken care of the rickets. But recently we had a case of rickets in America in my own hospital, which was very educational for me. Then, depending on the time, we will see whether we can cover the other topics as well. So this particular case was happened to a mother. She came to the doctor for a regular checkup. And when they were doing the regular checkup, they found out that the umbilical blood flow to the fetus was abnormal. So they had to do the C-section. So this was a premature delivery of the baby. When the baby was born, the baby was not functioning. So the lungs were immature, so they had to give this drug, which is called Serventa, to help in the breathing of the child. But because of the clinical crisis, the child was immediately transferred to the neonatal intensive care unit. One of the challenges in the clinic was that doctors could not control calcium in this little child. When the calcium was low, they gave the calcium, but the moment they gave the calcium shot up. So they were fighting it. They couldn't stabilize until they found a clinical cause for it, and that's where you notice that the line is flat. And let's see what exactly they were able to find in this child. What was causing that fluctuation in low calcium or after giving the high calcium? So I'm basically a biochemist, and I perform a lot of testing compared to the steroids, hormones, and vitamins. But when we do the electrolytes are very gold standard. They're very standardized throughout the world. In the emergency, they trust sodium values, calcium values, and potassium values. But when it comes to the hormones and others, the compounds we have been talking since morning, we need a very good assays. So clinically, they take very seriously calcium, and proudly we are proud of the testing we do in the hospital lab for this one. So this is the X-ray for this child. They were doing this X-ray of this child to make sure that there is a feeding tube, there is a there was a tracheostomy to make sure the child is able to breathe. So they take this child to make sure all the tubes are in place. They are not going to be at a different. So when they when they saw that the baby had some weakening of the bones, and that's when they decided that this baby has some kind of rickets. So immediately the intensive care units, they didn't consult any endocrinologist or anything. They started this young baby on a dose of 2,000 international unit of ergocalciferol. So there are two types of vitamin D. One is called ergocalciferol, which is a plant-based, and there is one is the D3, which is a mammalian form and is made in the animals or humans through the help of the sunlight. And they were also giving, along with the 200,000 nutrition, they were also giving this child Similac special care, which contained calcium as well as vitamin D. But we don't know what kind of vitamin D was in the Similac powder. Was it D3 or D2? So this is just a quick reminder of the physiology. Whether you take vitamin D2 from the plants or you take it through the sunlight, the physiology is that as soon as you take it, the liver will convert into 25-hydroxy vitamin D, and then 25-hydroxy vitamin D will get converted to 125-dihydroxy vitamin D, and 125-dihydroxy vitamin D is the bioactive compound. But the body will make 125-dihydroxy vitamin D only when there is a need to absorb more calcium. Otherwise, you can keep on eating a vitamin D. If the body doesn't need it, body would not utilize it. So this is the vitamin D3 form. As you notice here, pathway is exactly the same. Whether it is a D2 or D3, it will go through the same pathway. So when anybody takes vitamin D, it quickly gets converted to 25, those are the dark line. So that means there's a very quick first pass metabolism of the pro-hormone here or vitamin. So when I looked at the lab values for this child, so as you can notice here, the values were very low in this child for vitamin D, but when they supplemented with the 2000 unit of ergocalciferol, the values went very high. Then they had to stop it. Then it came down. So the question is, which form of a vitamin D was causing these high values? Then we performed the HPLC method to distinguish between how much was D2 and D3 in this child. And as you can notice here, the red is the D2, which was coming from the ergocalciferol, which was 2000 units, and then a little bit was coming also from the Similac powder. So they continued the Similac powder, but they stopped the 2000 units. And this is where the body's calcium was stabilized. So what led to the rickets, before I show you, as I told you, the 125 is a regulatory prohormone, and when the body had a low calcium, the body was trying to make more and more 125, and that is the reason it was a very high value. When there is enough calcium, it got down-regulated. So we should not use 125 as a biomarker. It is only the 25-hydroxy vitamin D, because 125 will have a fluctuation based on the calcium intake from the diet and from other resources. Unfortunately, this baby was born prematurely, and because of this disease, mentally couldn't develop very well, and unfortunately the baby has died. So the question comes up in the developed world, why this happened to this child. So let's look at the mother's history a little bit for a second. Mother was pregnant 4 times. She delivered 3 babies successfully, but mother had a history of the chronic hypertension. She had the preeclampsia. She was a smoker and had a history of depression, and she was a carrier of cystic fibrosis. So this is the action I got it from the radiologist, and what he is saying is that they took this X-ray to look for kidney stones, but in reality they found a lot of cysts in the kidneys. So the kidneys are enlarged. So in this case of the mother, her kidneys were not functioning. And during the last pregnancy also, her kidney function was degrading and the creatinine was also very high. And this is where we call natural compounds or vitamin D, but this is a compound which is really intercalated with the physiology here. So when the calcium is low, it gives a sensing to the PTH, there's a calcium sensing receptor at the parathyroid gland. Parathyroid gland will make PTH hormone. The PTH hormone will immediately go to the bone to give you calcium back quickly because hypocalcemia is very critical for life, and so is the hypercalcemia. So once you correct the calcium, then the PTH will ask the kidney to make 1-alpha hydroxylase to convert 25-hydroxy vitamin D to 125. Then the 125 will act on the receptor in the intestine to absorb the calcium, because otherwise, if you take more calcium, it goes to the wastage stool. And so when there's a need, 125 will be the savior to help in absorbing the calcium. So So normally when we are vitamin D deficient, we can take very cheap supplement, alpha-calciferol or cholecalciferol, because if I have a healthy liver and a healthy kidney, my body will make 25, my kidneys will make 125. As you notice here, this mother was not able to make 125, so she needed a form which already had 1-alpha hydroxylated. So she would have benefited from alpha-calcidiol or other, but these are very expensive. So normal people shouldn't take this, but this patient unfortunately was not diagnosed at the right time. But the vitamin D literature has exploded. There are thousands of publications every month, and the reason is it has been associated with multiple diseases. But in the morning, doctors showed that in the JAMA article, it has been shown that when you do the clinical trials, we are not finding any benefits. So that is always the key, that you can find something, the basic science, but if in humans in the end it doesn't work, then you have to really look at the whole mechanism things. So, but you know, the people who make supplements, they would like to sell you. There are a lot of supplements being sold all over the America and all over the world. They're selling more forms of vitamin D. They're selling vitamin D3, D2 in very high doses. So these are the differences between chemical differences. So if you are a clinical biochemist in your lab, you want to look at which one is D2 and D3, you need to pay attention to the molecules, and then you need to have an antibody which can recognize both D2 and D3. So as you can notice here, the first assay from Abbott can only recognize D2 by 52%, and then there is an assay which is, Alexis, which was not recognizing D2 at all, but now they have corrected that assay. Now their binding protein or antibodies are good, but if you're doing HPLC or mass spec, then it's very easy to get both analyzed. So here is a quick example here. We know that the Nigeria and other countries have rickets. So my doctors go to this country for a charity basis, and what they have shown is that they're not vitamin D deficient. So their vitamin D levels, they are running in sunlight and all that. What they're missing is the milk or the calcium. So this reminds you what is the hormone and what is the messenger molecule. So in reality, the vitamin D is helping the calcium. So you have to make sure there's enough calcium. So they give them the dry bones or the dry fishes, and that is what is correcting. But it really reminds how complex its physiology is. So in this case, they gave them 5,000 units of vitamin D2 and D3 to figure it out. Is D2 better than D3 or is it similar? But if you notice here, you give it, then the both seems to be converted by the liver by the same extent. They reach the same peak level, and they both form, D2 and D3 also form 125 to the same extent. This starting point is a little different, which I don't know why that difference was there, but if you look at the delta change from the baseline to the peak level, the delta is the same. But if you give to the control children, which have a very perfect calcium, then their body will not make 125. So whether you give D2 or D3, 125 levels stay flat. But because you are giving it and the liver is functioning, liver is still going to convert that into vitamin D into 25 hydroxy vitamin D. But then what body has to do to get rid of this? Your body doesn't need it. You keep on giving it. So ultimately, your kidneys will have to get rid of it, and then you can form calcifications and other side effects. And this is the mechanism here where body is trying to get rid of this. This 24 hydroxylase is another enzyme. So we're talking about 3 enzymes now. 25 hydroxylase, 1-alpha hydroxylase, and the third one is a 24 hydroxylase. In a normal individual, 24 hydroxylase is saving us from the toxicity of vitamin D. But unfortunately, very small percentage of the population, for the genetic reason, this is that which causes idiopathic hypercalcemia. So this was one of the child who was admitted to our hospital here, pediatric intensive care unit, and Dr. Latif calls me and then sends an email that what is going on here, that calcium is high, phosphorus is low, and there is something wrong with the PTH, because the PTH needs to be suppressed, because as you know here, if the primary hyperparathyroidism will cause hypercalcemia, and that's what she's thinking. But she's a smart doctor here, and she knows that if both the calcium is high due to vitamin D toxicity, then both calcium and phosphorus should be high based on the medical textbooks. But remember, this is a very young child who's facing the crisis of hypercalcemia. And right from the beginning, this baby was not thriving very well. Diarrhea, going to the hospitals multiple times, it was not doing well. So then upon interrogation, doctor says, what are you doing to your child? Mother says, she's buying something, vitamin D from the pharmacy, and she's, giving a small drop to this child. But we know that the child for 4 months has suffered significantly. And this is the, profile for hypercalcemia. In the intensive care unit, they are giving this calcitonin, which is not approved for the pediatric population, but the crisis is such a huge crisis that they have to bring the calcium down. So they bring the calcium down, they discharge the baby, but then the baby's calcium again goes up, but then this is a battle again, that baby's calcium is not being stabilized. So then we want to see what is the mother contributing to this child's crisis. Mother's labs are normal, mother calcium is fine, potassium is fine, creatinine is fine, and mother's vitamin D is not toxic level either, but 25 is 13, 125 is 39 nanogram per ml. Even though doctor did not order vitamin D test, which is a 25 hydroxy vitamin D test, but I couldn't sleep, so I said the lab, let's get the sample and run 25. The values were almost 400, and we say the normal values are 0.20. Doctor was shocked that what is going on here, where is so much vitamin D coming into this child's body and causing hypercalcemia. So then we asked the mother again, where are you buying this stuff from? She gives it to us, then we develop a special method. If you remember, the provitamin is not the test we do in our clinical lab. We test for 25 hydroxy vitamin D. So we had to develop a special method, and what we found was that the drop, in one drop it is supposed to be 2,000 units, but in reality it was 6,000 units. And instead of giving one drop, mother was giving the whole dropper. And if you calculate the whole dose, it became 50,000 units. She thought if a little bit is better, then more will be much better or the best. But that led to the whole problem in this child. Of course, the companies would like to advertise this compound. So the mother learned her lesson, and now this child is doing very well. But it's a long-term impact. We would have to see how much child's kidney functions and other vasculature has been suffered here. So the vitamin D supplements are not regulated. Please be aware before we go too far. We need to make sure all our science and physiology, all the facts are in place. Now they're adding vitamin D to the chocolates and different products there. But there is a group who wants for freedom that they should not be regulated. So there's always going to be a controversy in the society. But in reality, everything you put into your body is very holy. It's like a temple, and if you believe in God, God is sitting in there. But if you don't believe in God, you are a scientist. Evolution took millions of years to make this wonderful human being. So you have to really respect it and all the enzymatic systems here. So this is a summary here that every compound you take, it is going to get metabolized. In this case, vitamin D to 25 hydroxy vitamin D to 125 dihydroxy vitamin D, which will help if it's a reasonable concentration to helping your bones, and then it will also get inactivated if your kidney is functioning. If you take a little bit extra, but if you take too much, this could be a problem. So again, every test is critical, and we should be very serious in our approach to the patient. Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Professor Singh, for completing your talk well within time. Thank you so much. Is there any question, Professor Singh? So looks like everyone is convinced whatever case studies you have discussed and presented. And the message which everyone got it that even if the thing is good, one should be cautious, should not be taken in excess or without the advice or the test of the condition or any condition, whatever we feel. So what is your one-line message for the students?
I think you summarized. You exactly said it that if little is good, that means more is better. Especially when we're dealing with the human beings. These are little children. We just need to make sure we complete all the clinical trials. It's good to have multiple choices in the drug or the compounds of interest, but you really have to do pharmacokinetics because this is now 21st century. We being in India are on the world map, so we don't need to rush. Encouraging people to take any compounds which we think may be good, but thinking doesn't survive these. We really need a good clinical trials or good evidence before we tell people what to do.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for a wonderful talk.